Your brain cannot tell the difference between a vividly imagined experience and a memory of something that actually happened. The neural signature is nearly identical, and people who exploit this glitch by writing detailed scenes of their future as past tense entries every night report behavioral shifts within days. Chances are you've been journaling the wrong way your entire life, and the fix takes about 10 minutes before bed. Here's what most people do. They write affirmations. I am confident, I am wealthy, I am at peace, and nothing changes. The words float on the surface because the brain treats them like what they are. Statements with no sensory weight, no texture, no smell, no scene attached. Your mind processes I am confident the same way it processes the sky is purple. It notes the claim and moves on, unconvinced. The technique that actually produces movement works differently. You open a journal at night and write a specific scene, one particular moment, from your desired future, as if it already happened. Past tense, full sensory detail. You describe who was there, what the room looked like, what someone said to you, how the chair felt under you when you heard the news. You write it the way you'd recount a real memory to a friend over coffee. Why does the timing matter? Because the window right before sleep is when your brain is most suggestible to new information. The transition from wakefulness to sleep involves a shift in brainwave frequency, a state where critical filtering relaxes and incoming data gets encoded with less resistance. Writing a vivid scene during this window is like slipping a file into a cabinet while the security guard is changing shifts, and the past tense is doing more work than you'd think. When you write, I walked into the office and the team stood up and applauded the launch numbers, your brain categorizes that differently than I will walk into the office. Future tense triggers planning circuits. Past tense triggers memory circuits. The filing system matters. A memory, even a fabricated one, carries emotional weight that a plan simply doesn't. Plans feel hypothetical. Memories feel settled. So what happens in the days after you start doing this? The first thing people report is a shift in pattern recognition. You start noticing opportunities, conversations and openings that were always there but never registered. This is the reticular activating system at work, the part of your brain responsible for filtering the roughly 11 million bits of sensory data hitting you every second, down to the roughly 50 you consciously process. When you write a detailed scene about, say, launching a business, and describe the specific moment a client shakes your hand after signing a contract, your brain flags anything related to that scene as relevant. Suddenly you notice the networking event you would have scrolled past. You hear a sentence in a podcast that lands differently. The information was always flowing past you. Your filter just changed what it caught. But the filter shift is only the shallow layer. Something stranger happens underneath. When you write a scene in enough sensory detail, the temperature of the room, the sound of your shoes on the floor, the specific words someone says, you create what researchers in cognitive psychology call a memory trace that functions almost identically to an experiential one. Your brain begins treating this future event as something you've already survived, already navigated, already succeeded at. And a brain that believes it has already done something approaches that thing with a fundamentally different posture than a brain encountering it for the first time. Think about the difference between walking into a job interview at a company you've never visited and walking into a building where you've worked for 3 years. Same hallway, same elevator, your body moves differently in each scenario. One version of you is scanning for threats and managing uncertainty. The other version is just going to work. The scene journaling technique manufactures that second state. You borrow confidence from an experience that hasn't technically happened yet. This is where skeptics push back, and fairly. They argue this is just visualization dressed up in a journal, and visualization has a complicated track record. Studies on athletes who only visualize without physical practice show limited gains. Mental rehearsal alone can even backfire. People who vividly imagine achieving a goal sometimes feel a premature sense of satisfaction that reduces their actual motivation to pursue it. So why does the written scene version dodge this trap? Writing forces specificity. You can visualize vaguely a blurry podium, a cheering crowd, a general feeling of success. But try writing that scene on paper. You'll hit a wall within 2 sentences. The pen demands details. What podium? What are you wearing? Who's in the front row? What did you say that made them react? The act of writing recruits motor circuits, language centers, and spatial reasoning simultaneously. You're constructing the scene with your hands, which encodes it at a depth that passive visualization rarely reaches. And there's a second mechanism that separates writing from daydreaming. When you physically write a scene, you're forced to make narrative choices. You choose the sequence. You decide what happens before the key moment and what happens after. These choices create causal structure, a story with a beginning and a middle that your brain can actually follow backward from the outcome to the present. Suddenly, the path between here and there has texture. Steps emerge that you didn't consciously plan. You finish writing and think, wait, for that scene to happen, I'd need to call that person first. The scene reverse engineers its own action steps. People who practice this consistently describe something that sounds almost eerie. Within 3 to 7 days, they start making small decisions differently. They respond to emails with slightly more directness. They bring up conversations they've been avoiding. They make a phone call they've been postponing for weeks. None of these feel dramatic in the moment. Each one feels oddly natural, like following a path you've already walked, because neurologically you have. The brain is simply matching behavior to what it now categorizes as established experience. A therapist working with clients on anxiety once described the mechanism this way: anxiety is the brain simulating a future it hasn't prepared for. The scene journaling technique gives the brain a simulation it has prepared for. The emotional math changes. The unknown becomes a place you've already been, even if only on paper. There's a specific way to make this work that most people skip. The scene has to be one moment. A single, contained event, perhaps 90 seconds of real time. If you try to write an entire day or a sweeping life overview, the detail dilutes below the threshold where encoding actually works. One moment, the handshake, the notification on your phone, the sentence your partner says when you walk through the door. Pick the frame, then fill it until you can feel the texture of the chair you're sitting in. The second rule is consistency. One night won't rewire a filter, but 5 consecutive nights of writing the same scene, or variations of it, adding new sensory layers each time, begins to build the kind of repetition that shifts neural weighting. Your brain assigns importance based on frequency. A thought you visit once is noise. A scene you reconstruct 5 times in a week, with rich detail each time, starts looking like signal. The third element is emotional precision. Most people write the external facts of the scene and forget to describe how they felt in the moment. The feeling is the anchor. Your brain tags memories by emotional signature more reliably than by visual content. You might forget what someone was wearing at your wedding, but you remember the tightness in your chest when you saw them at the end of the aisle. The scene needs that layer. I felt my shoulders drop. My jaw unclenched. I realized I was smiling before I decided to. People who've done this for months report something beyond the behavioral shifts. Their relationship with the future changes. The low-grade anxiety that hums beneath most people's days, that background static of will it work out, starts to quiet. The future stops feeling like an open question and starts feeling like a return trip. You've been there. You wrote it down. Your hands built it word by word while the rest of the house was dark. The journal entry sits on your nightstand. In the morning, it looks like fiction. But your brain filed it somewhere else entirely. Right next to the memory of your last birthday, your first apartment, the sound of rain on a specific roof you haven't thought about in years. All real, all weighted, all shaping what you do next without asking permission. Your next move already has a memory attached to it. You just haven't written it down yet.